and welcome all of you to this very important webinar. So before we begin, just give me a moment to thank Ganatra ji for agreeing to speak on this topic on such a short notice. We put together this webinar yesterday and he's agreed to do it today. So thank you for that. This webinar is organized by Money Life Foundation, which is a 10-year-old non-profit, and we primarily work on financial literacy and consumer advocacy. So without taking too much of your time, allow me to introduce our speaker for the day. Dr. Rajendra Ganatra was a banker for over 2 decades and is now a registered insolvency resolution professional and a restructuring consultant who is also a visiting faculty at various management colleges. He has more than 3 decades of experience in project finance, asset reconstruction and financial restructuring. And he is also a registered insolvency professional who has been the former MD and CEO of India SME Asset Reconstruction. Most importantly for this group, he is also a member of the NSE's Investor Grievance Resolution Panel. I'm guessing a lot of you have already attended our previous webinar on the Anugrah series and you have some amount of what we normally do. But for the benefit of the newer participants, there are a few ground rules which we would request all of you to strictly adhere to. Rule number 1 is we have kept all of you deliberately on mute during the session so that the speaker alone is on focus, and we'll unmute you during the Q&A. For optimal viewing, we request you to keep the webinar on speaker view. This entire meeting is going to be recorded and will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. During the Q&A, if you have any questions or if you want to raise any doubts, there is an option in Zoom called raise your hand. So we request you to use that so we can moderate the questions accordingly. Also, please note your homes and your backgrounds are all visible to all. So if you wish to protect your privacy, then you can keep your cameras switched off. So now, without taking too much of your time, Ganatra ji, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Arvind. Thank you, everybody. I particularly thank Money Life Foundation for organizing this. I have been in the Investor Grievances Resolution Panel, which is now called Investor Grievances Redressal Committee. So I'll call it IGRC for consistency. I've been in this for over 7 years with NSE and also with NCDX for the last about 5 years. And I have seen through hundreds of such cases, not quite such, but quite comparable. And when I got this, call yesterday, I thought that this is so important that no matter what, I must handle this today, and that's how I'm here. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to do 3 things. One, I'm going to share screens and share the SEBI circular. Of course, before I even mention about it, the genesis of this is the Anugraha and the cohorts, fraudulent ways, which are very apparent, of taking money out and through advertisements which were, apparently disjointed, but taking money out, collecting for things like derivative advisory, etc., and putting the investors to loss. This is the theme and what can be done in this and how to go about it to get maximum possible retrieval of the capital which has been invested through these. That's the whole idea. So going by my experience, I can tell you what could be effective, what may not be effective, and what must have been done with you where you are put to loss legally. Often the frauds are done very legally by taking the gullible investors for granted, right? So that's how it is. So first and the foremost, let me just share with you for about 2 minutes one SEBI circular. See, this is SEBI circular of January 28, which refers to the circulars of June 2017 and June 2016 and February 2017, and where it's mentioning about the relevant sections of the SEBI Act under which these IGRCs are set up. That's a simple thing. What I'm trying to say is that this IGRC is set up by stock exchanges consistent with the SEBI circular. What does the IGRC do and what is it after all? The IGRC is not a judicial body, it's a redressal body, it's a resolution body. The IGRC does three things. One, it analyzes the documents, it analyzes the figures also, because often the analysis of the transactions throws a good light on what could have possibly happened. And it listens to both the parties, the complainant and the trading member, that is the broker, and comes up with its recommendations. But before it comes up with the recommendation, it tries to have an amicable settlement. Why amicable settlement is, tried to be forged is because often both the parties are seen to have committed errors. One party, the investor, an unwitting error, and the broker, a very, planned error. And I must say here, not all the brokers do that, though many brokers do that. So my comment is not directed to the trading members in general. It is directed to select brokers who do it, but there are many in numbers, and what you should be doing in such cases. Let me start with now highlighting some of the orders that we have passed. And one order which went also up to the High Court. I'll start with that first. Give me a minute, please. Projected this one. Here there was one investor which came over to the IGRP, or rather IGRC. The issue was about the unauthorized trade. There was a claim of about 12.5 lakhs. What happened? The whole thing was done absolutely systematically. The presentation from the trading member was impeccable. However, there was one thing which became very clear, and that was that despite having adopted absolutely systematic approach to catalyze unauthorized trades, it got, captured in the maze it had itself created. What it did was, it was allowing the associated person, like sub-brokers, that's the word which people use, the associate person to do trade of the complainant, the investor, and having done that, the trading member raised his hand, said that, look, I'm not concerned with the person who you are targeting as a sub-broker and who has done such wrong things. In fact, his wife is the sub-broker, not this guy. So if you had dealt with him, we have nothing to do. But there was one thing which was very clear, which mentioned that where there was a communication from this gentleman, the husband of this lady, who was the AP, associated person, sub-broker, but who wasn't doing anything her husband was doing, and he had sent a mail advising her to send a specific communication to the trading member. And once she does it, that much of her excess recovery would be refunded. He sent a mail, within minutes she copied and pasted to the TM, and eventually she was, reimbursed. That itself proved that there was a clear nexus between this third party, who was supposed to be nobody, and on the strength of this argument, the TM was escaping from this responsibility. Eventually what happened was, since this was proven, I gave an order saying that, look, this is quite clear now. You can't find an alibi, and the amount which has been claimed, entire amount is admissible. Now, since the TM had adopted every documentation very systematically, he went to the arbitration, and arbitration has also upheld this. Okay, what do we learn from here? I'm just closing this right now. Not that, I didn't read out everything. I just wanted to give some figures so that, you feel very much online. I'm closing this right now, and I'm coming back on this. What we learn from here? One, the TM who wishes to, conduct a fraud, he or that TM is going to adopt the best of the processes. Definitely the ECMs and the electronic contract notes and SMSs will go, because that's the minimum that can be done. But that can't be used as a rouge for the pre-trade confirmations. Second, the relationship managers, they owe allegiance to the TM, but they sweet talk with the investors. Third, they carefully, follow up with the investor, gain confidence, make a promise of an assured return, and then they somehow manage to get their carte blanche for trading. Of course, from 1st April 2018 onwards, SEBI made it mandatory for the trading members to take pre-trade confirmation and give post-trade confirmation. So the pre-trade confirmations are extracted very smartly by two means. One, a person from the TM side will give a call to the investor, having developed a confidence level, suggests to place a certain order with the TM, and with that promises that money, returns will be possible. The investor doesn't realize that this is a fraud. He gives a call to the dealer, and that is recorded. Later the dealer says that, look, he came and placed call. And I have seen that even industrially successful construction people have fallen in this kind of a trap. So the TM says that, look, this is a pre-trade confirmation by the other party, by the investor. So what can I do? That's one way of doing it. Now, in such a case, what I or my other colleagues, whenever the claim is 25 lakh or more, we have a panel of 3. What we do is that we say that, look, this is a modus operandi, and there is something called undue influence in terms of the Contract Act. We treat it as undue influence, and we pass order. And even such orders have been upheld. So that's one. The second kind of unauthorized trade is that the dealer gives a call, sweet talks the other person, extracts the pre-trade confirmation, and executes trade. And then what happens? When the investor wakes up, there have been so many transactions that you can't imagine. So many years have even passed. And then he comes running and he says these were all unauthorized. Then what happens? The TM says that, look, these are time barred. There, I have taken a consistent view that, look, the law of limitation applies only to valid transactions. A valid contract, if there is no contract existing, there is no question of the law of limitation applying. How? For example, you get any number of mails, even in your spam, you don't open all the mails. So even if mails have come to you from the trading member, where you have not placed the order, why should you open it? That's a consistent stand that you have to take. Look, yes, I received the mails, but I did not open because I had not placed order. Another, alibi that is sought is that there was a pay in and pay out, and the investor has accepted. And if the investor has accepted pay-ins and payouts, which emanated from all those trades, by default, it's an acceptance of the trades. Also, I have made an exception saying that, look, pay in and payout notwithstanding, if there is a dispute, it stays. An unauthorized trade does not become authorized simply because someone has accepted the pain and payout. He or she did not know about what was going on. So if there is an unauthorized trade, it is an unauthorized trade, as simple as that, notwithstanding time, because it's not a valid contract, and law of limitation would only apply to the valid contracts. Please see, when you discuss with your law advisor, please reckon this fact also. Right? In that case also, we have tried to reverse it. But I must say that while there have been successes at even high court level, but there have been failures at the arbitration level. Because what an IGRP does, and I would encourage you to go to the IGRC of NSE or BSE, wherever, if the trades were done in BSE, you'll have to go to BSE. NSE handles the trades which are done only in NSE. So you have to see where these were done. All right. Having looked at that, you will go there and you have to analyze. What I have seen is that there was one engineer, a valuer from Nasik who had come, and he was totally ill prepared. Now, I understood that he had been taken for a ride. It was exactly the same. He had been sweet talked. In some, he had been hoodwinked into accepting the suggestion. It was an extracted pre-trade confirmation in some, but in most of them, it wasn't existing. But he had not come up. See, if you are saying that, look, I have lost money because of unauthorized trades or misuse of my funds, you have to be very clear about it. Okay? Now, how will you be clear about unauthorized trades? Did you receive mails? Did you check those mails, the ECNs for both? For the derivative transactions as well as the capital market transactions. If you have not analyzed, you have to analyze now each and every mail. You have to segregate, look, I had not placed any order and therefore I am not responsible for that. And since I did not place any order, I am not obligated to look into it. And no law of limitation would apply because this has come to my notice only now, right? That's one thing. Second point is that if you have not seen it, right? And if you're seeing now, once you point out that these are all unauthorized, do they stack up? Do they capture all the money that you have invested? What are the kind of losses which have happened? Has it wiped out your capital, or it has not wiped out your entire capital? If it has wiped out all the capital, it would only mean that your money has been deployed for derivative transaction or maybe currency derivatives. These earn maximum brokerage. The capital market transactions don't earn maximum brokerage. And very often, in fact, almost all the times, the unauthorized trades are done in derivative and currency derivative transactions because they earn huge brokerage. And the brokers take signature on the dotted lines where it says that the brokerage would be as high as rupees 100 per lot, whereas even 25 rupees per lot is an acceptable brokerage, right? That's what they do it. And if you can figure out that, look, they have not destroyed all your capital, it would mean that they have diverted your money. In any case, going by what I have heard on Sucheta ji's videos and also from the write-ups in Money Live, I have a strong feeling that your money has been diverted. So you will have to even seek forensic audit, not just forensic audit, even the operational audit. Now, when you go to the IGRC of NSE or BSE, and if there were any, NCDX, MCX deals, I would not know about it. If you had, agreed for the, commodities derivatives, in that case, even you have to tap those areas. But in NCDX, MCX, it's very clear. Unless there is an issue about the commodity for delivery, is straightforward. I would feel that it is primarily NSE. If there is something of BSE, you may do that. But the IGRC has no mandate to order for transaction audit, forensic audit, and even the operational audit. That will lead to, for that you will have to look at the legal provisions with best of the advocates, and the best of is to have one advocate for anybody or one law firm for anybody, not a standalone advocate, but a law firm which can deliver a great advice, a great petition, and then it is filed. So my feeling is that it has to be a multi-pronged approach. Certainly IGRC, but alongside not just an arbitration. Even arbitration has limitations. Since I see an element of fraud, and fraud is a criminal, it attracts criminal provision which is beyond the scope of IGRC or the arbitration. So you will have to go to the court of law. So for that, it would be the best to engage a good law firm. And imagine somebody who has walked away with 1,000 crore would put the best of the law firms to defend them. So this is what you will have to do. Let me also open a couple of more such orders and buttress what I have said so far. One moment, please. Here is one order which was very recently done, about on 28th of August. What happened here? An old man gave in confidence, to a trading member. He shifted his equity, no derivative, only equities held for long time, from the times when CCI was there, to be managed by one TM and RP, that is the RM, that is the relationship manager, sweet talked him. And the whole thing started from 2014, and he woke up only in 2020. This came to us as a panel. What we found, I can show you that, or I'm not going to the argument. What we did was, we did an analysis of the logs. You can see that. Huge amount of trades were done. He had not placed even a single order himself. But he was sweet talked, and in the recordings, which were available, only a few, because these are old, and before 2018, there was nothing mandatory. In 2018, whatever little was available did not help him. The TM took an alibi, says that this is time barred. And we also, since we look at the evidences also, we really had no way to accept a contention that, for so many years, somebody was unaware. Fortunately, you people have come forward fairly fast. So what had happened was, see here, a small amount, 63.70 lakh was the underlying value of the transactions done in FNO. Next time it was 20 crore, then it went down. So here, in these 3 years, everything was wiped out, and the sweet talking continued till 2018. Then he started waking up, and a man of 80 years of age. Eventually what happened? Then he came. We knew that he had been taken for a ride, but the evidences were stacked against him. And what happened? We passed, as against his claim of more than a crore, we passed an order for 7 lakh, which was half the brokerage. The brokerage was shared between the TM and the associated person, that is sub-broker. That was about 14 lakh of earning. We said at least half should go. And will you imagine? The fellow has gone for arbitration. Now, we can't be very sure what the outcome would be. We tried to be helpful for the investor, but the investor didn't help himself. He allowed it to be blown. Now, what is happening is that most of the time, this is what happens. Now, coming to your case, you have invested money on the strength of a communication which came from a Gmail account which was not communicated from him. Let me tell you, SEBI very explicitly discourages any assured income. The mischievous brokers, their people will go sweet talk and promise such assured income, hoodwink. And when the welcome call is made to you, the person calling from the TM side very sweetly tells you and speedily tells you that in terms of so and so circulars and all that KYC documents, no, there is no assured return, there are risks in the market, etc., etc. So whenever some grievance comes that, oh, he has he had made offered us assured returns, but the fellow says, look, I never made any assurance of it, I cannot say that my man promised it. See, the welcome call, it's a clear record that there was no such thing. He has okayed it, and now he is claiming, so he is lying. So what is happening is that you are being hoodwinked. Did it happen in case of you? You have to see that. Fortunately, this doesn't appear to be so. What is happening is that you have invested money in derivative advisory. Now see, the portfolio management services is a different segment. There has to be a properly executed, on a stamp paper, a properly executed agreement between the trading member and the investor for a PMS. That would be equity. Derivative advisory is not on. If a TM does it, that straight away becomes illegal and he has to refund the money back. The trouble happens when the fellow is left with no money. Now what do you do? Often you find that, insolvency proceedings are done against corporate debtors, the companies. What kind of recovery happens? Barring exceptions, very low amount of recovery happens. We know that the recovery actually on an average from NPAs is less than 15%. Same thing happens here. When an IGRC approves an amount, the broker is supposed to remit within certain working days from the date of the IGRP meeting. And when that happens, the NSE sets aside so much of money from the investor protection fund. But what happens if the investor protection fund is not available? Then you have nowhere to go. There is a similarity between a savings bank account and a demat account, but money is fungible. Shares are not fungible. Yet it gets misused through these kinds of a means. So I would conclude by saying that looking to the facts that I have heard, in fact, I would call upon Suchita ji to add something where I can comment. Based on the facts of your issue, I feel that your amount has been misused through a contribution to a scheme by a party which had no authorization, which has been sought to be delinked from the TM because it did not come from them. There is a specific provision, there is a specific circular from the NSE, and there would be a similar circular even from the BSE regarding advertisement, and I would like to share with you that right now. Was it followed? Even that needs to be studied by you. I find that it wasn't followed. Let me share it with you for a few minutes as a part of my concluding remarks. There is an FAQ by SEBI on the advertisements. What is an advertisement? So all forms of communication issued by or on behalf of stockbroker in publicly available media that may influence investment sale decisions of any investor, prospective investors. I will share this with Suchita ji, with Money Life. This will ensure that the nexus is very clearly established, right? And then there are further FAQs which are not relevant. I just wanted to highlight one point, that any on or behalf of, by or on behalf of the broker, if that is, you know, advertised, right? So you will have to reckon that, because this is obviously, to my mind, a fraud. You will have to analyze your ECNs that you might have received, because ultimately, if you contributed money and the transactions were made, you must have received the electronic contract notes, messages. There is nothing wrong if you did not see it, because you know you had not given any pre-trade confirmation. And let me add one thing. You cannot give a carte blanche to anybody to trade on your behalf. Then even that is used as an alibi, to treat it as a pre-trade confirmation. That's not allowed. That's illegal. You can't authorize the TM to just act on your behalf. So if somebody says that you had given this kind of a authorization, that's not on. The SEBI circular is very clear that from the investor there should be a pre-trade confirmation and post-trade confirmation as well. So please analyze your contract notes, figure out what kind of destruction has happened, put somebody to analyze to show that, you know, this has been only to earn brokerage. Because imagine if options are done, nobody can make money from the options just by playing blind. Options can yield money only if it is done with strategies, not otherwise. I have taught derivatives to MBA students, but since I do not have time, I do not trade in options. You have to see the pattern, what was done. Because when you go to the court of law is very dispassionate. It goes by the documents, but analysis also helps. And I must tell you, there are two judgments. There is one judgment from Justice Dhanuka. Please download from the internet, it's available. Justice Dhanuka took a view that if the trades have been done and if the investor has been sleeping, he cannot have an alibi. It was in certain background. But if you are saying that you had not given any pre-trade confirmation, and since you had not done that, you have not seen it, you can create another precedence. And when I cleared on the basis of presentation by the investor that she was a approval, pre-trade confirmation was extracted from her, and that too not all. It was upheld at the arbitration level, and it was also upheld at the High Court level, and that was upheld in the court of Honorable Justice Gupta. I do not know the first name. And often when the petitions are filed in the court of law, this is not merely strategic and legal. There are tactical issues also. Which court of law to go, and that can be best understood by the right law firm and the right advocate. And doesn't I did not emphasize, you are very sophisticated people. You know that the senior advocates, no matter there are issues about these epithets, yet they command an enormous amount of audience from the honorable judges. So please keep that in mind. Again, to summarize, any communication which can be linked to the TM, notwithstanding a claim to, dissociation between those two, is very obvious and it can be proven, number one. Number two, analyze your, ECNs which have come. Say that you never invested, that there was no question of any pre-trade confirmation, right? They extract that confirmation, which was illegal. Number three, find out what is the kind of loss, analyze the logs, what kind of trades were done, and show that these were done only to hoodwink and extract brokerages. Find out how much was charged per, lot of the, whether futures or options trade, and show that this was only done to hoodwink you. Finally, if there is anything, it shows that not your, if your substantial money should be intact even now, and if you are not getting it, then of course you have to seek forensic and operational audit and claim a criminality. That's what you'll have to do. And finally, if I've shown you, I have some more, IGRC orders, but I don't think it's necessary. What I can tell you is that by and large, in my 7 years of experience, if I would average out the claims and the amounts recovered, despite the best efforts of me as an IGRC member and my other colleagues who are as passionate, the figure does not work out even to 25%. It's less than that. So please keep in mind that you have to put your best foot forward. Now, when I say that average is so much, doesn't mean that, all get so much. There is an example where even 1.5 crore was cleared, and the fellow received it also. So, when you are talking of averages, you are talking of a range. Now, you will have to adopt whatever I have suggested to be on the higher side of the range. That's what I had to say. Now, Suchita ji may add whatever, and I can further respond, and let there be question and answers so that I can give a very coherent and focused answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Rajendra ji. I have a bunch of questions which I think people want to know. So one is that you said the trade confirmation has to come from the person. So what happens when you have signed a power of attorney? Then there's no question of trade confirmation. If you can quickly answer that.
That's not legal. That's not permitted. That's not permitted.
So if you've signed a power of attorney, essentially you're saying that they can't make a claim at the NSE?
No. And power of attorney again is meant for a seamless transaction. Suppose if I have given an order, like say I have IDFC, I have HDFC Securities. It's very important that we should do online trades only, not through anybody. Sorry, I just digressed a bit. No, so if I'm placing an order, if it has to be facilitated, the transfer from my Demat account must be done. So that power of attorney can be used only for a valid transaction which has been authorized by me. Now, I can't ask him to trade on that. POA is not valid for that.
So basically,
even otherwise, sorry. Even an authorization, not a POA, but an authorization to trade on someone's behalf is not valid.
So, in spite of the POA, they can approach the NSE Grievance Council and it will be looked at. Okay, that is one question. The second question that comes up here is that there is the role of the clearing member. So there are 2-3 things that all the investors are worried about. One is that, they seem to think that the broker was giving them false data and what is on the NSE is different. So they first need to get information. So even before they come to fight or file the complaint, they need to get information from the NSE. Now, is the National Stock Exchange facilitating this? Because speed is of essence. They need to know what is there in NSDL, CDSL books or on the NSE website as having been traded on their behalf. Is there some way they can make an application and get this data quickly?
No. What happens is that whether this data or even the ticks, tick by tick data that often sometimes the derivative investor would seek sometimes, they do not share because that's an internal data. But yes, when the IGRC member seeks that, they give it. So the best would be to file a very well crafted IGRC complaint. And I'm available for that.
Okay, fantastic.
In that background, whoever is that I would do informally because I would not like, it may land up with me also. And if I take that up, I have to go by the facts and figures. So I will not recuse myself from this. So therefore, if I do informally, impersonally, that's the best way to do. In other words, this can be sought definitely, but from first principle, if all the ECNs are picked up, then it will become very clear. I don't think there could be dabba kind of a trading here. Well, it seems that big transactions have been done only to earn brokerage, and I have seen TMs, the brokers are ruthless in destroying capital for their brokerage. So in short, you can ask, they can ask. that this we had traded over a period of time. Please tell us which were the transactions done in NSE. I think though, they're not obligated, they should be, obliging. But ultimately, if the complaint with the IGRC is filed, the IGRC panel, definitely will be a panel meeting, not less than 25 lakh. Claim will be more than that. The IGRC panel members will definitely get.
No.
Okay, now one more question.
5, 7.
And just make everyone mute right now. Yeah.
Yeah, one.
Yeah. Now, please unmute yourself. Please unmute yourself.
I think it's actually ma'am speaking. So ma'am is.
Yeah. She can. Okay. I know she can. 1 minute. 1 minute.
So if I've understood you correctly, what we understand is that from NSE, you can't get more than 25 lakhs because that's the upper limit. But you mentioned a case when it went to 1.5 crores. Let me complete. So, the people who have invested here, a big chunk of them are over 1 crore. There are some who are below. So I want to understand the max that they can expect is 25 lakhs. On an average, what I have seen from NSE numbers is it's much less than 25 lakhs, what people have been given. So we are basically saying, while you try the NSE as an option, you may get something, but you need to do other things also, like demanding forensic audits and whatever, which can happen only through a court of law. Am I correct?
Absolutely. Now, the IGRC mandate is that if there's an individual member handling the complaint, the individual member can approve, if at all if he or she finds merit in that, less than 25, up to 25 lakh or less. If it's more than 25 lakh, then it goes to the panel. The panel can approve more. Now, I must put a caveat here. I'm not aware if recently anything has changed, because I don't think there has been any change in the law. Recently, we received a panel meeting where there was a claim for over 1 crore, and where we approved 7 lakhs, which you have seen. So whenever it's more than 25 lakh claim, the panel looks at it, but that amount can be approved by the IGRs.
I see, but because I was told very specifically by the NSE that 25 lakhs is the upper limit. So I don't know whether they have changed the rules. It used to be 15. It's been.
I'll have to check up and I'll get back to you on this. Because as recently as 28th of August, we had a meeting where the claim was over 1 crore.
No, this is very good to hear. I mean, the claim may be higher, but I'm asking what is the maximum that is paid out by the grievance fund?
If the claim is valid, it can be entire. I'll just tell you when we had cleared 1.5 crore. That was some time back, but doesn't matter. The point here is that I will confirm and get back to you again.
Okay. So, Arvind, you want to take over and take some questions from the audience?
Yes, ma'am. So we've received a couple of questions. One of them is asking the role of the clearinghouses in this particular case, and how does the IGRC look at this?
When IGRC is there, IGRC looks at the investors' grievances, and investor grievances happening because of there may be service-related grievance, or there will be claim-related grievance, or a service-related grievance leading to claim. And often it relates to the doings of the trading member. Now, if the clearing member has delayed matters, then also clearing member doesn't commit. See what happens. The moment, let's say, a sale order is given, if the sale order is given, the delivery, the payout has to happen at T+2. So on the day of delivery, one would expect that the broker would transfer that equity. I'm talking to capital market operation. That transfer those chunk of shares to pool account, and from pool account it will be auto pay out. So the depositor, the CDSL or NSDL will take, and then the transaction would be done. So that's what the clearing members do it. So it is auto. And by and large, it's auto only. So it's all automated. Now, when the clearing houses does it, through, of course, CDSL, etc., it's all computerized. It's auto pay out, right? And it accepts the aversements of the, or rather, I would say the underlying declaration of the broker that this is an orderly transaction. So it depends purely on that. So IGRC does not look at any undoings of the clearing members. IGRC's role is beyond, doesn't include this. Am I clear?
So just to ask the question related to that, when there is money in pool accounts, because margins are transferred to pool accounts, and if there is a bank guarantee against that margin, and the clearing member does not invoke the bank guarantee, but instead sells the shares belonging to investors, is there some way in which the role of the clearing member can be brought into question before the IGRC?
Often what happens is, here I will get back to you again on this, but as I can figure out, having dealt with such matters in the commercial domain, the party who has the guarantee or any other security is at a liberty to exercise whichever security the party, has.
I'm going to answer them. So, there are certain questions that I see people asking, which frankly make no sense at all. There are some people who say that NSE has to take responsibility for everything that the broker did. I don't think that is going to happen at all. Whether, you ask Mr. Ganatra or you ask us, there's no point in saying, Jisha Shah is saying all these arguments are fine, brokers on ventilator, exchange should pay. It's not going to happen. You'll have to take responsibility for what you did. I think that another message is very clear, that you have to have parallel things. One is you have to move NSE. You have to also parallelly move civil court if you want anything larger done. I think today on the group, we know that he may have diverted money to real estate. If you want any of that brought up, there's no option but to go to a civil court. EOW on its own may do something, but I want people here to remember that NSCL is going on for more than 5 years. So if you're expecting something fast and happening from the EOW, don't pin all your hopes over there. You may also want to look at a civil case in a court of law.
Yeah, I don't know where we were. Somehow I missed the link.
Arvind, another question.
Yes, sir. So I had a question. So somebody shared a question that what if the TM does not pay heed to the NSE complaint? If the NSE defaults the broker, in that case, is IGRC arbitration applicable?
Two things here. See, if the IGRC has awarded the compensation, IGRC says within so many days it will be done, and the NSE blocks that much fund from the investor protection fund. Now the question is, and if it does not remit, immediately that money will be remitted from the investor protection fund. The fellow is also, often we give 3 to 5 days so that, if he wants to file for arbitration, he would do it. And here certainly you expect that there will be a call for arbitration. So everyone will have to be very focused. Now, what happens if the investor protection fund is exhausted? Then there is no answer to that, in fact. Is that clear?
Yeah, sure, sir. A couple of people have also asked us this question, that as a first step, is it advisable to go for arbitration? As a first step.
As a first step, if you want to go for arbitration, instead of that, why not go to the court of law? See, arbitration, which arbitration? You'll go to the NSE's arbitration. Right now, I'm limiting myself to NSE's, let's say.
Okay.
You can go to arbitration. There is no problem. Because here again, arbitration is also meant to resolve the claim issue, arbitration, if you find that there is a need for a forensic and even operational audit to, determine criminality, because it's the fear factor which will drive them. Okay, in that case, it could be court of law. But yes, if the claim amounts are substantial, you can straight away go for arbitration.
Okay. Somebody's also asked a question that under the arbitration, is it only the securities that is covered, or does it also involve the cash that is involved in this case?
Cash means somebody has remitted, given cash, currency notes to somebody, or made investment by remitting the to the bank account.
I think that.
No, I'll explain this, Arvind. What Anugrah has done, Rajadraji, is to tell people to just invest money with them and sign a power of attorney, and he was doing all the transactions on their behalf. So they have just written a check of maybe 50 lakhs or 25 lakhs, and he has promised them a monthly return of 12% assured. He used to give a little or more. So in this case, it's like handing over cash to him. That is where they got the maximum returns a few years ago. So there will be no question here, I think, of them, authorizing each trade. So what happens to this kind of case when it goes to the IGRC?
Now, often we encounter a situation where there is an arrangement between two parties, and that, does not help the investor. Though, on this basis, he cannot, do trades. Whatever be the arrangement, the trades have to be confirmed. And if the trades have not been confirmed, then there is a significant case here, notwithstanding the pains and payouts. Even SEBI circular of first, relating to start of these requirements of, pre-trade confirmation, call recordings, etc., 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 and even some alternatives in case of a force majeure and call recordings are not there. All this is there. Nowhere it says that a carte blanche can be given to a broker. So it will still be upheld. That only issue will be that, why this delay? But still a strong case exists that this is an unauthorized trade because he has not taken approval. Approval is necessary. I can't authorize anybody to do on my behalf. That's not on. And in fact, some such specific things have come up also in the IGRP. And NSE's feedback to us was that this is not permissible. And that all emanates from SEBI.
So one more question, which is that NSE often conducts a forensic audit. So it has done it, I think, with Karvi, with BMA, and hopefully doing it with Anugrah as well. Why would it not cooperate and share this with people so that they are able to use every possible legal avenue that's available to them? Is that something that people can ask through IGRC, or it's not possible to get
outside RGS? As I said, often few things they don't give. Like recently I encountered one investor wanted tick-by-tick data. He complained that, his squaring off happened even without the stop loss being reached. So he wanted tick-by-tick data. And we know that, when somebody is capturing, first, the first and the first transaction in a minute, he cannot capture all the transactions. So I told him that, look, this is all automated, and whatever has happened, I cannot imagine that it has been unauthorized, because in any case, it was going to be triggered, and unauthorized becomes important consideration if we find that somebody is going to earn out of the normal. So at that point of time, NSE said that we cannot give that. But in this case, this relates only to their transactions. I would feel that it should not be an issue. They can make a demand, say that, look, we want to analyze how our money has been used. They did not take our approvals. But did they send the ECNs to them? See, they analyze the ECA, ECNs, they would know which exchange it was done. These will be massive data and somebody will have to be, deployed to evaluate that. And the best is one well-crafted, complaint is registered with NSE and even SEBI. That brings additional pressure. And the moment that happens, the IGRC member can seek the details. Of course, IGRC member cannot, that's not public, data, publicly available information. But to summarize it, this can be sought. And I would feel that, NSA would not decline giving that. Because if I have done a trade and I say that, look, I'm getting something having been done in your exchange, and I am uncertain, please confirm. I would feel that they will not say no. They will give.
There's a question that the mutual funds and the securities in the pool account, they belong to the investors. So is a clearinghouse authorized to sell these to set off the losses of other trades of the brokers?
See, if there are losses and if in your ledger, there is a debit balance, and if you have been asked to clear the debit balance, and if you do not do it, it's the right of the broker to trigger the sale. But not suo moto when there is nothing, no debit balance, no demand has been made. You know that it's T+2. Now, if T+2 is there any transaction, then if there is a debit balance, there is no justification for its continuance. Sometimes the brokers allow debit balance to continue and even go up because, what they feel is that, let the debit balance swell. I'll have more, income. And then I have enough of security, so I'm going to simply, liquidate. So sometimes they do. It's not permissible. The brokers are supposed to close out T+2, and if that doesn't happen, they have to sell the securities or seek the clearance of the debit balance. So nothing wrong about it. But why the question that it is done by clearinghouse? It is a TM who triggers it, the broker who triggers it. Okay, I just saw a pop-up that there is actually a credit balance. Absolutely, he can't do it. He can't do it. If there's a credit balance, how can he do that?
This is not very clear, Rajendra ji, because everyone thinks what they have got depending on the data that the broker has given them. So nobody has a clear picture which needs to come from the exchange. But there's an interesting question from Mr. Dilip Modi which comes back to this PMS issue because, the derivatives advisory was an illegal PMS of sorts. So in the case of PMS, a power of attorney is given at the start and no further authority is required from the investor. The investor gets a monthly statement. So this point that you're making that the investor has to sanction each trade does not happen in case of a PMS. So are the rules different for a SEBI registered legal PMS and different from what this would be, which is an illegal depository advisory? It's not under PMS.
Okay. I'm encountering this situation for the first time, but I would still respond. Now, if this kind of an advisory is illegal, the derivative, any derivative of such an illegal entity will also be, illegal, because the derivative's value is derived from the underlying, entity. I would say entity. So if you have an illegal entity, how can a document which has been signed by this illegal entity be legal? I'm surprised that any TM would do such a thing. Who was their legal advisor? This is obviously not legal. But this needs to be looked at by, somebody who understands stock market. The law firm also, if is engaged, the advocate must be knowledgeable about the stock market, and there are people who are knowledgeable.
So people are confused between IGRC and arbitration and whether both have to be done parallelly. And another follow-up question is that once a broker is declared a defaulter by NSE, then does arbitration go out of the window? This is a question that's repeatedly asked on the chat.
Okay. If you go for arbitration, even then you can approach an IGRC. I have seen that. But that does not make sense because, if you have approached for arbitration, then anyway, IGRC is a step below arbitration. IGRC is advisable, but what happens is that if you're made, certain claim and certain actions, two things you are going to say, service related and claim related. And in the matter of service, you're going to say that they have done these things illegal. So they have cheated us. So IGRC would say, sorry, I can't do anything in the matter of cheating because that's a criminal issue that some other agency would engage. I would look at the claim. Now what happens is in IGRC, when we make the report, we make it with a very clear view that it will help the arbitration also, even the complainant concerned, to be coherent in his complaint. Often the complaints are not very coherent. So we do that way. So it does help. But as far as arbitration is concerned, even that doesn't have any authority to initiate any, criminal, entertain any criminal kind of activity. It will say that this falls beyond, so it has to be police complaint and go to the court of law, etc. In short, it's a good idea to go to IGRC. If the IGRC clears 1 crore or whatever it is, let the other guy go to the arbitration. Let him spend money. That's a good idea. And again, IGRC can't, see, it's not like a court of law. The SEBI guidelines insist on this being completed within about a month's time. So the stock exchanges are always under pressure. So a well-crafted complaint going to IGRC, at least in one case, can serve very well.
Excellent. Ask a question with raised hands.
Yeah. Santosh ji, can you please unmute yourself? I think Santosh ji has not heard us. So we can move on to the next person. Jisha Shah, can you please unmute yourself?
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you so much, sir, for all your inputs. My question would be, suppose there are lots of clients who are not part of any DAS or TG Mandi or whatsoever sort of thing. They were using normal services, and there they were margins which were lying, normal broking margins on which you are trading or investing, and they are in the range of 4 to 5 lakhs. What happens to them, sir?
Okay, but what is the complaint here? Have they lost any money? Is there any unauthorized trade? And for that reason, there is a loss. See, right now we are focusing on unauthorized and illegal tradings leading to the destruction of capital. Does it apply here? See, they've been doing normal transactions. They probably might be doing even online. Then what is the issue there? I'm not clear about the issue that you raised.
Sir,
I haven't got the money.
Sir, issue would be, suppose I have 500 shares of Infosys, which I sold.
Yeah.
And now margin is lying with Anugrah, and they are not returning it.
Oh, you have to get immediately, it's T+2. You have to immediately file complaint with NSE or BSE, wherever the trade was done, and you have to get it. But I would feel that this is absolutely serious, that if such small amount he is not paying, it means, has he gone totally down under, belly up? You immediately file without delay.
So it has been filed. Sorry.
Check whether you have done, the transaction was done on BSE or NSE. If it was done on BSE, file in BSE. If it was done in NSE, file in NSE. Online. Just give a very clear date. This is the ECN I am uploading. This was the date. This was the transaction done on so and so date. Money should have been credited to my account. It has not come. And immediately it will have to be taken up by the IGRC. Please do that.
Okay. Thank you for that, sir. There's a question from Mr. Jaydev Nair. So can you please unmute yourself, Mr. Jaydev Nair?
Yeah, thank you, sir. First of all, Sujata madam has been rallying on this for last 3 weeks, so thanks to her as well. Sir, we are now finding I mean, there are 113 people who are asking a question that is the arbitration itself the right way, because it's more than evident that NSE has written us an email to many people saying that Anugrah is not responding to our messages. Anugrah has said he has lost money, he doesn't have funds, therefore give us time to see the way forward. There is an email that has come to a lot of people saying Anugrah is not responding, which means that it is more than evident. Maybe there is a technical way to prove that he is at fault, but the email says that he is not responding. Why to expecting people to spend 13,000, 15,000, 20,000, 30,000 up to do an arbitration to prove what is already proven out in the market is painful for any customer. They have lost 5, 10, 1 crore and pay more money to prove that. I mean, he's been lying dead for the last 30 days and now we have to prove that he's dead.
Okay, two things here. First, can you tell me how NSE has sent this kind of a mail? Is it Suomoto or somebody had filed and complained in IGRC, etc.? What happened? How they have come up with that? That's one issue. But that's one issue. Before you answer, I'll add another point. See, if this is one letter which has come, it does not mean that there is no money lying in the investor protection fund related to this broker. It makes a sense. You're absolutely right. When you're filing for arbitration, you have to pay some fee, etc. Especially, of course, the TM. You can definitely file in RGRC because that's a very specific award that happens. It makes a sense. You are not losing any money by filing with IGRC. You file. Then the exchange is, bound to honor that award, but while giving time to the TM to file for arbitration. And here the fellow will definitely file for arbitration because he would like to buy time, but even arbitration is time bound. You got my point?
Yes, sir, I got your point. We have everybody who has got this email has actually complained on the NICE website, and they have been getting this reply saying that the broker is not responding. The broker says he doesn't have money. The IPF may have money to pay the people, but now arbitration and even lawyers are charging money to do this IGRC everything. So there is more money going out of pocket.
There is no money to be paid for IGRP. Absolutely no problem on that. You can file online. You can state your problem, but you step in the shoes of the IGRP member. You are claiming unauthorized. Okay. You can say that, look, he took, power of attorney, but he was supposed to seek my approval. He did not seek my approval. I have not approved any transaction. And since I have not approved any transaction, I did not see anything. There will be, counter arguments and all that stuff. And identify which are those unauthorized things. You must be having the ECNs. And then work out your claim amount and seek that money. So you're going to see if it's unauthorized trade. Then both the things he has to make good. Your capital. In fact, if your entire capital has to be restored, not just the brokerage. Yeah. So please file IGRC with IGRC. Don't wait for that. You don't need to engage any lawyer. If there is any thing which needs to be discussed, I'm available. But once you see that, it becomes very clear. There's no big issue about it. Is that clear?
Ma'am, you wanted to share something?
No, I just thought Mr. Uday Desai wants to ask.
Wanted to speak in Hindi. Yeah.
Most welcome.
Yeah, Uday ji, आप unmute करके आपका सवाल आप पूछ सकते हैं.
हाँ सर.
हाँ.
सर मैंने डीमेट अकाउंट खुला था ना, उसमें मेरा शेयर जो है ना उसने प्लेज किया था और उसके बाद मैंने ऑपरेट बंद कर दिया था. फिर मेरा शेयर जो था 13 लाख के अबव था और वो शेयर अभी मेरे अकाउंट में है ही नहीं सर. मेरे को पता ही नहीं चल रहा है कहाँ गया वो.
क्लियर फ्रॉड. आप सीधा, अगर वो चला गया तो आप सीधा फाइल करिए BSE NSE. for payment, because ये broker related है. See, ये broker related है तो आप definitely claim करिए पूरा का पूरा. आप कब चला गया ये? आपको कब पता चला? This is something beyond imagination. 14 lakhs of, it's like I have kept my money, a few lakhs in my savings bank account, and it's been simply debited. आप immediate file करिए.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Sharad Gopinath is saying he has a specific question. So if you can unmute yourself and share your question quickly, then that will be helpful.
Hi, my name is Sharad Gopinath calling from Bangalore.
Yes, please.
This is related to BMA Wealth Creators, which got defaulted in September 2019. This is a specific question where many of the shares which were bought in 2014, 15, 16 and were held for long-term investments unknowingly have been pledged by the broker, and I think HDFC Bank and many of them have sold off the shares because there was a lack of margin and other stuff. Now that we don't have the shares and we don't have any of our money which is left, which is roughly around 1.7 crores, subject to around 30-40 clients total, what is the reprieve in this? Because now I think the shares were never transferred to the customer's Demat account. But every time when we go and log into the back office of BMA Wealth Creators, it was specifically telling that we had shares. And every time NSE would send us message stating that the broker has given the specific amount, that this is the amount available, this is the value of shares, which was always giving us the comfort that we always had our shares. In such cases, what is the, and I think this is the same case which has happened with Carvey or many other brokers which is now defaulted. So how is that? Is it that we are going to be saved by the Investor Protection Fund because we have the contract note, because we bought it through NSE or BSE, or
two things here, Mr. Sharad. You have to file for your claim with NSE or BSE wherever the deals were done. And I remember this BMS advisor, I have seen also in Suchitaji's article, I have seen this is an absolutely fraudulent TM. It has been doing some such things only. You have to file. And if there is nothing in the Investor Protection Fund, then it leads to a larger issue. Who keeps a leash, on these brokers? Who's responsible? That's a bigger issue than comes up. Will the investors be taken for a long ride and very expensive ride by such, brokers who are not being regulated properly? That's the bigger issue. But you come to the specific point, how can they, in fact, earlier also, if HDFC Bank and ICICI Bank, etc., they had pledged, the broker had pledged shares with them which didn't belong to them. So SEBI had reversed that thing, if we are aware of it. So if that was done, probably you can even seek reversals, but you'll have to, you have to at least file immediately with the IGRC, and also seek to know what has happened with the shares. You would like to see, you'd seek to know what was done with this. You had bought these shares over a period of time, right?
Correct.
They're supposed to be lying in your Demat account. Your power of attorney was related to, facilitating a transaction for sale of your shares lying in Demat account or purchase of Demat shares, right? If you're doing day trade or buy today, sell tomorrow, that's a different matter. So your POA relates only to that for a seamless operation. POA cannot be used to pledge your shares, which are, yours, where there is no transaction necessary. So that's illegal. So if these shares have gone to some bank and they were pledged, if that is what it is, then you have a chance of reversal of those. So in IGRC, you will have to seek, one, of course, the payment. Second, seek to know where these shares have gone. See, once you raise the questions, those questions will go to the TM, the broker, and the TM will have to respond. In one case, in the Yes Bank problem, I found that one guy had sold his shares and the broker did nothing about it. And it was handled very badly. I'll not go into the details of it. From all the intermediaries concerned, what was very obvious was that the the broker had failed in that. When I asked the questions to broker said it will need to check and all that. I said, okay, we are given a time. Normally, the IGRC meetings are concluded on the day they are held. They are not postponed. But maybe 0.1% do get deferred for another meeting, but thereafter it gets done. Ultimately, I found that they had failed and they were trying to conceal something, so I passed an order. So what will happen is that if you are raising your questions, the NSA will send to those guys and they will have to respond properly. And if they fail to respond, it will be to your advantage. But you are still incurring a massive counterparty risk of the counterparty going belly up. You are really not protected. And that's why often allow me, Suchetaji, to digress a bit. Please do not go for small-time brokers just to save some small, your brokerage. And don't expect that someone will give you large returns. If they were capable of doing it, they should even sell their flats and put money and make big money. It never happens. And go for only online trade. I haven't seen complaints coming about against HDFC Securities, ICICI Direct, JM Finance. No complaints. Minor service-related issues were there, minor, during COVID or something. But no complaints otherwise. So big banks, and don't go for, offline trades where there's a chance of getting hoodwinked. And if you are doing offline, if you feel that you're impulsive and you might enter into a trade online, you want to give it thought. If you're keeping offline, you make sure that if you are giving an order, you are checking it. Whatever message comes to you or email comes to you, you are checking it. Don't go for an alibi later on. Thanks. I took a couple of minutes extra, yeah.
Yeah. So somebody saying that IGRC in arbitration, if trader is declared default, still not answered. Actually, that I think sir and ma'am have both answered. In case you missed that question, you can check out the recording of this video, which we'll be uploading, where you'll get the answers and the previous questions that have already been taken up. We're running out of time, so I think we'll just take one more question. Sunny Shah, can you please unmute yourself and request us to keep it very precise and quick.
Right. Hello, thank you for having this session. My query is I have already filed a complaint against Anugrah in NSE and SEBI. The issue is, the complaint is relating me specifically to non-receipt of margin securities, which were being shown on the back office continuously by the broker as shares lying in the broker beneficiary account. And the point is that now when we have taken up the matter with the broker, he verbally states that these shares have been clearly sold abruptly and unauthorizedly and without confirming, without their consent, and they have sold the shares to Edelweiss has sold these shares. So my query is specifically that we have filed it with the NSE and SEBI against Anugrah. Now we have a direct relationship only with Anugrah. We don't have a direct relationship with the clearing member, that is Edelweiss. So in this particular case, if we want to take up and highlight the matter with the NSE or any other authorities.
No, you have filed with NSE, right?
Right.
Have you been informed of the date of the IGRC meeting?
No, just the same email which is...
Yours is open and shut case. It will be decided in half hour. He'll be asked to remit. Immediately, you should insist he should give me immediately. On that very day, he should not be given in 2 days or 3 days time. When you are ask the GRC to remit immediately, then it will become very obvious whether he has got investor protection fund, etc. If not, then the larger issues come up. I think there is a cleanup necessary in the system. You can't have small-time brokers who destroy, but that's a larger issue. But you have filed it. Let me see now. I'm going to ask my other colleagues.
A follow-up issue, if I can ask, is that if the broker himself is saying that they don't have the shares and these shares have been sold in April, May or June of 2020. Whether a clearing member can be put in place, because they have also exceeded the powers clearly, if the fact is true, that we don't know. There is no debit balance in my account.
See, the trouble is the clearing members have really no incentive to do any harakiri. What incentive do they have? They bank on the declaration of this. Like when statutory audit is done, certain things are, you know, accepted based on the management declaration, something like that. Here it's done based on the declaration. Though, of course, since this has come up, I'm going to examine it more, whether the clearing members, you know, can be, you know, held responsible. But they are in the back office, they go by the flow of, you know, instruction which follows, flows from the broker. But definitely in your case, it's an open and shut. Your award has to be given by the IGRC immediately. If he has told you something verbally, it doesn't solve your problem. For solution, you have to go to IGRC and then escalate later if something happens. Sucheta ji, this is a major issue. I think some cleanup, that's a different matter. It's beyond this.
Yes. Thanks a lot for that, sir. So I think we'll have to wrap it up. I think you're also running short of time. So, sir, if you could just summarize a couple of key points that people can take away from here, which they need to consider. So that will be really helpful.
Okay. I will mention about this and in general.
Yeah.
About this, it is best to file IGRC complaint, well crafted, precisely mentioning the trades which are unauthorized and the claim calculated on that basis. Number one. While doing so, you can say that we had given him an authorization, but authorization, we never said that you don't have to take our, you know, prior consent. No authorization will be given saying that, look, you don't need my prior consent. They were supposed to take my prior consent and they did not take it. So it's unauthorized. Second, we received communications, we did not check because we were not obligated to check such communications because we had not placed any order, right? And we can't keep on seeing each and every mail. That's what it is. And thereby what you're doing, you're making your claim precise and you are also covering yourself up, okay? Then if you feel that there is, you know, surplus in your account, have you received, you have to check whether you have received the ledger statements. And if there is any credit balance, you should be asking that has the credit balance has been asked and it has not been returned. Even if you're not asked, you can say that the credit balance is so much, I must get my money back. File it with for the IGRC immediately and let it be a flurry of these things, well crafted, and seek your claim. This is my claim, right? And if you feel that, you know, there has been any fraud, you mentioned that there is a fraud also. And there should be all these you know, forensic audit of the accounts, operational audit, because we have to decide who is responsible. That also you can ask in IGRC. IGRC will raise its hand because it's not in the mandate, but nobody stops you from asking. Please do that and do that immediately. That's one, as far as the specific is concerned. And be ready to fight it out in the court because ultimately you have taken a huge counterparty risk. That is this TM and a fake associate who does not fit, you know, who is that the nexus is very clear and it does not follow the FAQs which have been, you know, can I share the FAQ here or I'll send it separately. You know, it does not meet what is required there. So, you know, the nexus is very clear. So fraud can also be established. Now the trouble is one intermediary, the immediate, you know, intermediary, the second party is going belly up. Are there other, you know, counterparties of this counterparty or the regulatory authorities? Have they failed in any of their duties? That's a different matter altogether, right? So that has to be seen. And finally, please don't ever go for small timers in the name of small brokerages. I don't even look at brokerage ever. Go for online with the biggest banks and inquire with people before you even, you know, decide. And don't ever think that easy money is ever possible, which you all know, and which Money Life has been crying from rooftops and telling people not to bank on that. So please do that. Be a fundamentalist like I am and like Money Life is. In fact, I had, you know, subscribed to their letters. Then it exhausts it. You know, the period was over and then I missed out. So I even subscribed to that. Probably you have to be a fundamentalist. Look at the accounts, look at the quality of auditor, all that stuff. That can be another session. That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Thanks a lot for those really kind words, sir. Thanks a lot for that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Suchita.
Yeah.
Suchita ji,
Thank you very much.
Arvind ji, everyone.
Wonderful session. There are innumerable questions, but really very kind of you to agree to our request so quickly and do this so comprehensive. I think it deserves a big hand.
Thank you very much.